So hi, welcome back. So in this session we're going to take this wall to Mudbox and perhaps add some kind of a bit of a grainy wall texture. So I'm going to go to File, Send to Mudbox, Send as a new scene, and we should have it here. I'm going to press W to bring the wireframe so we can see what's happening. Now in Mudbox, for this kind of stuff, I'm not going to use sculpting, I'm going to simply use the painting. So the first thing I'm going to do, just under the paint section, I'm going to click on the new layer. And we're going to start with a bump map. Just going to call this wall bump underscore 1. And I'll keep the map 2048. I'm not going to work on 4K just for the sake of speed. TIFF file, 16-bit floating points, RGBA, so that's red, green, blue, and alpha channel. A bump map, click OK. As you know, the bump is based on black and white values, in other words grayscale, where white color will bring the surface up. That's the surface really. So just to show you, if I click on my brush tool and just do that, you can see. Now you might think that this is kind of sculpting. In actual fact it's not. It's basically painting a bump map. But for these kind of simple objects, there is no need to go to sculpting. We can just use the bump map. So for the wall, what we can do, depending on what kind of a wall you're going for, you know, we can use a stencil with some just going to click on the left so we can see the wall. We can see it. We can use a stencil, something like this, for example, where it's got a bit of a grain. And if you paint it, you'll get something like that. Now, don't forget, we always reset our paint brushes in here. And it's good to set the strength to 100 initially, and you can actually check to see the effect. So we've got some kind of a grain there, and we can reduce and increase its effect by using this slider, which is the weight slider there, something like that. And if you want to go on and like say add another layer on the bump, and again use either a stencil or a brush, maybe something like this. Let me just see. You know, this one let me just turn off, press that. So this one, when I use the projection especially, I can see the image. I'm just going to go to a direct shot, left camera, something happened. Let me just switch to the brush. Here we go. It's better to, yeah. So I can do something like that, for example. And now I've got that stencil which has got grayscale values. You know, I can do that, or I can put this underneath, just slide it underneath. So you can see that's happening. What we can also do, bring this back up, and if you don't like this smooth surface, for example, something like that, what you can do, you can do a mask like we do in Photoshop. So if I click on this create layer mask, switch to my brush, turn everything off, and as you know, in masking, white keeps whatever you have, and a black color or a grayscale, you know, I'm sorry, anything beyond the 0.5 gray will actually remove things. So I can just click on that and only focus, start removing things. say something like that, and then I can hold on to the shift button and just smooth that interpolation between those two areas, and maybe bring this guy down a bit in line with the other one. Something like that. You can do these kind of things. It depends on what you're aiming for. In actual fact, we can go for another bump map, a bump layer, sorry, and maybe bring this one. I'm just gonna use whatever we have in Mudbox. See what we can get. Something like that. I just want to diversify it, so we can use the modes. Overlay, yeah, overlay could work, and I'm just going to reduce it a bit. Again, these amounts can be controlled. Here we go. The color of the wall can be determined in the shader in Maya, because the Mudbox is not designed for physically based rendering. Unfortunately, in terms of painting, it's just catching up. It's good for sculpting and creating bumps and normal maps. I mean, you've got full control. That's quite good. But in terms of visualizing your object, it's not as good as, as I said before, Substance Painter and all the rest. They're just catching up. But with sculpting, it's like, it's quite strong. So what we can do now, we can simply merge this layer. We've got one object, and the next thing we can do, again, I'm just for the sake of being quick, I haven't kind of checked the amount, the size of the grain. I'm just gonna say I'm happy with that. And as you know, the next step up from the bump map is actually a normal map. So it's better to use a normal map because we've got some distinct micro details. So what we can do, we can hold on to the right mouse button on the bump map, and it says at the bottom, it says normal map from bump. So we can click on that, tangent space as is, click OK. And what it does, if I just turn off the bump, it creates a normal map for us, and which is kind of quite powerful. So we can utilize this in Maya. And the next thing we're going to export this map, now that we've done it, the normal map, as a TIFF 16-bit, and I'm going to call this bottles scene. So that's that one, and within that we're going to call this wall normal map on something like that, and select OK. It says saving textures. Now there is one thing I would like to let you know. On the right hand side, you can see it says it's connected to Maya, so it's kind of a bit of if you don't have a powerful computer, because it keeps talking to Maya, what you can do, you can go back to Maya, if it's causing trouble for you, and just simply close your scene and see what Mudbox does now. It kind of doesn't have that relationship anymore, because we're not going to send this meshed back to Maya. We just utilize this for our textures. It's important that this one has been UV mapped, otherwise if you won't get the results that you wanted, it will be quite weird. But if you're just simply going for some grain or something, you might not need to UV map it. Anyway, we're done here, so what I'm going to do, just minimize it, going back to Maya, bringing my file back. We're going to select the wall mesh, hold on to the right mouse button, assign new material. We always use Arnold standard surface, AI standard surface in other words. and it will pop up the attributes. So I'm going to call this wall shader. And now, leaving everything as is, I'm going to scroll down. Just going to turn these off for now. Scroll down to the geometry tab. Under the bump mapping, click on the checkered box. Standard Maya file node. And where it says use as bump, well, we're not going to use it as a bump because we did a normal map. And remember, in Mudbox, it says, you know, when you convert to the normal map, do you want a tangent space or a bump or object space? Well, we pick tangent space there. Normal maps are based on tangent space, so that's what we're going to pick. Excuse me. And we're going to flip the RNG channels for now. And then, now that it's been done, we'll go to File. I don't like any filters on these large files, so I'm going to turn it off. I don't want any filtering. We're going to just keep it raw. Image name. If you set your project folder properly, it's going to take you to the source images. And we call this the folder bottle scene, and that's it, normal map. Click open. So we get something like that when I press number 6. I'm just going to isolate it. Quite noisy, as you can see. Going back to our bump mapping, there's one final thing. When you brought a normal map in, under the file node, you want to make sure that your color space is set to raw. That's how Arnold and Maya Arnold and normal maps talk to one another from when you have something from Mudbox. It's treated as raw. So you get something like this in the viewport. We can always tone it down. If I go back to our attributes, if you and we can always traverse through nodes using these buttons. You know, the bump that will control that amount. We can always tone it down here. If not, if we're not happy, if this is not enough, we can go back to the source, and you know, you always keep a copy of it as a Mudbox file. Then we can start playing with these. We can reduce them from the source in the production line, in other words. But for now, we're just going to leave it there. And the next thing I'm going to do is go back to my base color. I like to, for the walls and stuff, I like to give it a nice weight of like 0.92 or something. And then we can pick the color. So let's say something, a bit of beige. Later on, when we have our lights and we start rendering the scene, we'll tweak the roughness of our object. We are also going to tweak maybe the weight of our specularity, increase and decrease the roughness on that. But for now, I think we were okay with this one. So I'm going to save the file, and then we'll carry on in the next session. So thank you for listening.